When it comes to one, we're going live. Okay, can you hear my mic though? Okay, okay. Welcome to a brand new season of Let's Talk. We'd like to apologize for the late start. We had some technical difficulties, but we're with you and it's good to have you with us. I'm your host, Woodroe Thompson. I'd like to express our gratitude to those viewers who have been with us for the past 3 years. We'd like to also welcome our new viewers who are viewing with us tonight. Let's Talk has been on hiatus for some time, but we're now back on Sundays, every Sunday at 7 p.m. on the social media platform. We're on Facebook Live, we're on YouTube, and also on our website. You can find us, letstalkca.org. Previously, we could be seen in Yes TV, but with the impact of COVID-19, just like everyone else, we're now using the social media platform. And our goal remains the same as before, which is to reveal the heart of Christ through engaging media conversations. It is fair to say that the COVID-19 pandemic has had a major effect on our lives. It has impacted us in so many ways. Many of us are facing challenges that can be stressful, they can be overwhelming, and they cause strong emotions in adults, in our youth, and in our children. Learning how to cope with stress in a healthy way will make us and the people we care about and those around us become more resilient. Coronavirus has negatively impacted many people's mental health and has created new barriers for people already suffering from mental illness, especially within our Black community and in the community of the minorities. During the pandemic, about 4 out of 10 adults have reported symptoms of anxiety or depressive disorder, and this is from 1 in 10 adults who reported these symptoms back in 2019. Today, we have invited a very special guest that will help us to share with you not just the implications of COVID-19 on our mental health, but how to cope during these very difficult times. It is my pleasure to introduce to you my guest, who is a psychotherapist, a social worker who's passionate about all things mental health and wellness. My guest earned a master's degree in social work. She received specialized training to provide treatment in anxiety, depression, OCD, BPD, trauma, and PTSD. My guest is the compassionate and innovative Marci Gray of Gray Matter Health Mental Wellness Studio. Marci, it's good to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Bishop.
I want to thank you for making the time to be with us. We really appreciate it.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Marci, before we get into our discussion and talk more about mental health and the impact on our lives, I'm always interested to know people's story. So take a few minutes and tell us about your journey. How did you get here? Did you always want to be a psychotherapist?
Well, I've been in the field of social services for over 20 years, helping individuals in many capacities. Also worked a lot in ministry, counseling, and helping families through their tough times. But I found that there's nothing like life experience to teach you some things and to give you some passions. So when I went through my own battles with mental health and challenges, I found God brought me to a place where, you know, sometimes you're brought to the desert and you're brought to a new place. And I think he brings you to those places in order to provide some purpose and some new renewed sense of being for you, for yourself. So I feel like he brought me through this journey so that I be able to help other people through their journey. So yeah, working in the field has been great, but also having my own experiences has also prepared me well.
That's good to know. Now, I noticed that your mental wellness center is called Gray Matter Health. Why that name? I'm just curious.
So Gray Matter is because my last name is Gray, Gray.
Right.
And so Gray Matter is also the brain. So
I figured that.
Exactly. So there we go. It's brain health, it's mental health, and my focus is brain and mental health.
That is great. That is such a good tie-in. Now, you're familiar with so many terms. I hear them all the time. I hear terms like mental health, mental wellness, mental illness, and sometimes I have a difficult time telling the difference. What's the difference?
Right. I'm so glad you asked the question. So mental health is a state of well-being, right? So there's a spectrum of mental health. You can have good mental health. You can have bad mental health. It's on a spectrum of well-being. Mental illness is when your mental health goes wrong. So when you have poor mental health, then you have mental illness. And often when you have a mental illness, you have an actual diagnosis. At times, people go and they get a diagnosis, and then they are treated for a mental illness. There's many, however, as we know, that suffer in silence and they're mentally ill or unwell, and they're on that end of the spectrum in which they're not doing well. However, we all have mental health. We all have a state of health. We all have a state of well-being. And so we're always striving to have optimal mental health.
Myself as an example, I may think that I'm mentally well, but there may be something happening with me and I'm not cognizant of what's happening. How can I tell if there's something wrong with me mentally?
Yeah, good question. So there are 6 areas that I kind of tell people to look out for. I tell them to look out for your eating habits. Have they changed? So a lot of times there's a change in eating habits. A lot of times there's a change in your sleeping habits. Are you sleeping well? Having disrupted sleep? Is it difficult to fall asleep or stay asleep? A lot of times there's a change in function. So you're not able to function the way that you were able to function before. So there's several different areas in which I ask people to take a look at. In terms of your relationships, are you having a lot of conflicts in your relationships? Is that an area that is of difficulty? And I tell them to look at these different areas of their life in order to sort out whether they're having high functioning mental health or they're not functioning well and they need to get some help.
Man, so that means I need to come see you ASAP because those, I'm just kidding. Now, COVID-19, since last March, it has impacted our lives. And this is a loaded question. What are some of the effects of COVID-19 on our mental health?
Oh, wow. There's been so many effects. So the isolation has impacted everyone.
Wow.
Being isolated and no longer being able to have social gatherings. People who love to be around people and touch and hug and to have that contact with people. People are missing that. To be able to go out to the store. A lot of people use retail therapy. They love to shop. That's been taken away. People love to go to gyms. Wow. That's been taken away. That's impacted physical health. It's impacted mental health. The online life that we now have has impacted people a lot. So they're constantly in front of a screen rather than in front of live people. So that has impacted. So what we've seen is an increase in depressive symptoms and an increase in anxiety symptoms all around with a lot of people.
Wow. Now, how does mental health relate to my physical health? Is there a correlation between mental health and my physical health?
Absolutely, 100%. A lot of the times one of the things that we use to treat mental health is looking at your physical health. So for example, when you're depressed, you oftentimes have a lot of physical fatigue. And so one of the strategies in treatment is to actually activate, we call behavioral activation, by working on your physical health, working on physical fitness, energy. Exercise improves mood. And so we want to actually activate some of the physical well-being of someone in order to help their mental well-being. There's such a tie and correlation. You know, when you've gotten even a physical health diagnosis, it impacts your mental well-being, right? So you could be told that you have, you know, a life-threatening disease, and then suddenly you start to feel depressed or you start to feel over anxious about things. So your physical health has a direct impact on your mental health and vice versa.
Wow. So you have explained for us the difference between mental health, mental illness. Is mental illness hereditary?
That's a good question as well. So it's not that it's hereditary, but there are biological factors and genetic factors. Wow. There's also sociological factors. So if you grew up with a parent who was depressed, for example, you may learn about how they had behaved, and that may impact your behavior, right?
So it's behavioral.
Yeah, there's also behavioral. Yeah, so you can be taught, you know, for example, a parent who is overly anxious all the time tends to teach their children inadvertently how to kind of be anxious all the time. So there's also, you know, all these research and all of the studies that show that there is some biological factors, there is a lot of sociological factors. So there's several different factors. There's impacts on events that have happened in your life. There's your personality, your temperament. There's a lot of different things that go into what causes mental illness. And one of the things we want to consider as well is the spiritual aspect of things. So, right? So we sometimes think that if we're not spiritual enough, that can cause mental illness, and that is a myth. Right? That is
you need to say that loud, and you need to say that again for some of the Christians that are watching.
Yes, absolutely. You cannot say that it is because of sin or because of not being saved enough that you've got a mental illness and you're mentally unwell. You know, any kind of, we consider mental illness just like physical illnesses as disease, as something in the body that is not doing well. And so we want to pray it through, absolutely, but we also want to get medical attention and professional help, just like we would if we were told we had cancer or diabetes or any other physical illness.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because in the Christian community, we sometimes fail to realize that there are times that you do need to see a professional. And I think professionals are gifts that God has given to us, that yes, we do pray, but there's a time that we need to consult, you know, one of the professionals. Now, we just celebrated Black History Month. And one of the things I'm looking at is the mental health disparities among Blacks, or people of color, or brown people, however we differentiate that. So how does that work with, when you think about ethnicity? The information that I read recently is that the black population is impacted more than any other group. Is that true?
So it depends on who you speak to and what studies you find.
Right.
In some studies, you'll find there's a greater impact because of the impact of socioeconomic status, because of the impact of stress, because of the impact of racism, discrimination, et cetera, et cetera. That being said, mental illness doesn't discriminate in that mental illness can impact everyone from every walk of life. Right? But there are factors that you do need to consider within a lot of Black communities or communities of color, which is the added cultural stigmas and the added experience of racism and racial trauma that can also impact mental health adversely.
about
Should
that.
I go on?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah. So with these studies, there's a lot of studies to show that in Black communities, for example, you are seeing that people consider mental illness to be a weakness instead of seeing it as a mental illness, like an illness, like a physical illness. And so that then exasperates when someone has a mental illness, they're not getting treatment. So if they're not getting treatment and they're dealing with it on their own, then you're going to have higher rates of the mental illness within these communities because they're not getting help, right? Whereas in others, there's a stigma across the board with mental illness, but there's an added cultural stigma when it comes to Black communities because we're considering it as someone who's lazy or they're mad in their head or they're sick or they're mental. There's all these statements of stigma that has to do with mental illness that is impeding people from getting treatment and getting the help they need.
Marci, this is great information, and we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back. I'll be right back with my guest. Please do not go. We'll be right back after this quick break.
Sometimes you walk through life alone, wondering if anyone understands what you are going through, hoping someone will listen and offer a word to make your day. The Church of God of Prophecy offers unconditional love and support, regardless of what you are going through. Visit cogop.ca for a location near you. The Church of God of Prophecy, developing authentic disciples of Christ.
Welcome back to Let's Talk. I'm glad you've joined us. And for those of you who are flipping through the channels and you found us on Facebook, YouTube, we're glad to have you with us. We're having an interesting conversation with Marci Gray, who is a psychotherapist, sharing with us some really important information about mental health, especially within this time of COVID, and especially within the Black community. Now, before we went to break, Marci, we're talking about the fact that mental illness is a stigma within the Black community. Maybe I have a family member who have recognized some of the signs you mentioned before. But when I approach my family member, they deny it. They want nothing to do with it. They get upset at me. They tell me I'm fine. They tell me they're fine. And there's nothing. I feel helpless. Is there anything I can do?
Absolutely. The thing is, it's difficult because if they don't acknowledge the mental illness, then it's hard for you to push. You can't push them to do something that they don't want to do. However, it is important that you continue to lend some love, support to them. Right. And also that you're not accusing them of something or diagnosing them with something and saying, I think you have this. But instead, you're having conversations that, you know what, this is what I'm noticing. I'm noticing, for example, that you used to always get up and you used to always go, for a walk every morning. And for the last few months, I've noticed that you're in bed every day and that you find it hard to get out of bed. Or I've noticed that you've totally cut off all your friends and you're no longer talking to anyone. So you're going to show them things that you've noticed and you're going to have the conversation about that. And it's really having a non-judgmental, supportive conversation with the person about the things that you've noticed. not saying, I think you have depression, or I think you are, maybe you're schizophrenic, or maybe, you have bipolar. You're not trying to diagnose them.
No.
You are just trying to have a friendly and supportive conversation with them about what you've been noticing.
Right. Now, I know you mentioned this before, but as a pastor, as a minister, I have to go back there. How should the church and Christians respond to mental health, and how much does faith impact my mental health?
Yes, so very, very important that faith has a positive impact on mental health and wellness. When we see the rates of suicide, for example, in the general community, they tend to be lower in the faith community because of the belief in God, because of the belief in the fact that God has a purpose for your life, and because of even the fear of going to hell, for example.
Right.
So having a faith tradition and faith belief does help you in terms of your mental health and wellness. It gives you something to hope for and to hold on to that a lot of people that are not of the faith community may not have. So that's really important in terms of faith. In terms of the things that the church can be doing is, for example, leaders, pastors, ministers coming to trainings about suicide intervention, for example. So I do a lot of trainings on suicide intervention and how to talk to someone who is thinking of suicide, how to successfully walk someone through when they're thinking of dying or they want to kill themselves. Really having those tough conversations and how to do that intervention well. And so having leaders and pastors really come to some of the mental health trainings is really important so that they are feeling a little bit more equipped, because a lot of studies show that people like to go to their minister, their clergy, when they're having troubles with their family or their mental health challenges personally, or someone in their family seems to be having a mental health difficulty. So equipping leaders is an excellent, excellent idea. And if you're ever looking for someone to help equip your leaders, I am definitely here as well. I do a lot of training and development for secular organizations, so I would love to do that as well with the leaders of Church of God of Prophecy. But another thing is, in general, just with families, referring people to a good Christian counselor, referring people to great supports that are within the community, really, really, really important. Being able as a family to openly talk about some things. So a lot of times with the families, we don't talk about things. We pretend everything's okay. We don't have these conversations. So being able to talk to your family is so very important, and not pushing these things under the rug, but having really open conversations about these things. Well,
the times that we're living in, we're going to take you up on that and that recommendation for sure. Tomorrow will be International Women's Day. Is there a mental health gender gap?
Well, that is a tricky question. So when you say gender gap, do you mean, is there a difference in genders when it comes to mental health and mental illness?
I'm wondering if it impacts women greater than it does men.
So some depends on the different illness. So some illnesses may be predominantly females get impacted by, and some males. So for example, like depression, you may see more females come forward in regards to depression, but then you may see more males struggling with addictions. And a lot of times they may be struggling with addictions because they have depression and it's not being treated or it's not being noticed. So there is a difference. And so with women tend to be a little bit more in tune with their emotions, and they're okay with expressing emotions a little bit more than men. And so men find it difficult sometimes when they're dealing with mental illness to even share that with someone. When they're feeling sad, when they're feeling down, it's sometimes difficult to open up to people. And so they're suffering in silence at a greater rate. But we know Jesus wept. So it's okay to weep, and it's okay to admit that you are sad or you're down as a man. And so I encourage men to also reach out to their family, friends, but also to a professional, their clergy, and a professional like a Christian counselor who can also help them throughout these tough times. And women who tend to want to be super women, especially the Black women, like to be super women, know that they like to work hard and all of that. But if you're struggling, it is so important as a woman to also to reach out for help. I created an empowerment planner. So it's a mental health and wellness planner that is helpful for both women and men to help them on the journey of mental wellness. So if you know that you're not doing so well, maybe you are the things that I mentioned in terms of sleeping or eating or your functioning or your thoughts, what your thoughts are, or your emotions are all over the place or down, or your relationships, you can see there's a tension. You want to start using tools like this to help you through your everyday to work on your mental wellness.
Okay. Now,
diagnosis, it doesn't mean that you have trouble with your mental health. If you just want to work on yourself and just work on self-improvement, work on self-care, work on just general wellness, because there's talks about charting your food, for example, your nutrition, your water intake, your making sure that you're getting enough sleep and all of those things. So it works on yourself both physically and mentally for your just a daily strategy of self-care and wellness.
what if I'm already living with an anxiety disorder?
Yeah, if you are living with an anxiety disorder, I'm going to tell you about a little thing about the planner and that's unique about it, is that it charts it allows you to track anxiety levels and it allows you to track your mood. And why that's important is so that you can see over time whether things are getting better, getting worse, and whether you need to actually look for professional support. And also, you can also track, when you're tracking your anxiety levels, also see what the source is. So when you've had a day with high anxiety, looking at what the source of that is, and also the empowerment pages that are worksheets in there helps you to actually challenge different areas of anxiety in your life. So
very good.
It's a very good tool for helping those who are suffering with anxiety disorder, or if they're just anxious in general.
Okay. Any final thoughts to our viewers who may be struggling with mental health issues?
Take it from me that you can definitely recover. There is recovery. There's sometimes when you're struggling with your mental health, you're feeling like there's no end. You're feeling like it's hopeless. But I want anybody who's listening that is suffering to know that it's important that you're not suffering in silence. Please, please reach out for help and know that recovery is absolutely possible. You can definitely pray yourself through, but you can also seek therapy and seek supports as well.
Right. Well, Marci, it has been a pleasure and a privilege to have you here with us and Let's Talk. Now, you mentioned several resources. How can our viewers reach out to you? How can they find you? You have some really wonderful things that would be beneficial to our viewers. How do we get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of me on social media. So I am on Facebook, I am on Instagram, and I am on Twitter. You can reach me at Gray Matter Health, Gray Matter, MatterHealth. So Gray Matter Health on all the Instagram, all the platforms, social media platforms, as well as graymatterhealth.com, the website. You could always reach me there. And to get the empowerment planner, it is available on the website, graymatterhealth.com.
Well, Marci Gray, it was a pleasure to have you. I look forward to speaking to you again. I look forward to taking you up on the recommendation of having our pastors and ministers trained so that we can help folks who are not only wrestling with mental health, but also suicide prevention as well. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Bishop. I'm so glad to be here.
God bless you. Thank you. Good to have you. Thank you. Well, I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight. This is, as I mentioned at the top of the program, this is Let's Talk Revamped, and we're now on social media, the social platform. You can find us at letstalkca.org on our website. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube. You can even find us on our national website, cogop.ca. And it's been a privilege. Look, very quickly before we close, we would like to thank you for being with us today. We hope that you've heard and learned something that will be helpful during these difficult times, and that it will keep you mentally healthy. We would love to hear from you. Please, we'd love to hear from you. Check out our Facebook, check out YouTube, go to the website, letstalkca.org, and please let us know some of the topics you'd like for us to look at. If you know someone that has written a book, someone who'd like to share, please let us know. Please communicate with us. Please pray for us. Pray for this program. Final thoughts. I'm a Christian. And so as Marci Gray mentioned, I believe that prayer works. And so you need to just continue to pray and seek the Lord. If you do not know Jesus Christ as Savior, you can cry out to him. He will change your life. He will transform your life. But there's also a time after you prayed that you also need to see a professional. And Marci Gray is a certified and a well-known psychotherapist if you ever need to see someone. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next Sunday evening. Let's keep talking. God bless you.
Sometimes you walk through life alone, wondering if anyone understands what you are going through, hoping someone will listen and offer a word to make your day. The Church of God of Prophecy offers unconditional love and support, regardless of what you are going through. Visit cogop.ca for a location near you. The Church of God of Prophecy, developing authentic disciples of Christ.